Hey, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. Before we get into today's show, I have a huge announcement, something I'm incredibly excited to share with you. This is something I have been working on for the last 2 years, and it is my new book, Eat for Energy, and it's being published with Hay House. This is actually my first big publisher deal, which I'm very excited about. And it's going to help me get the word out about my work and help a lot of people who are struggling with their energy levels in a really big way. And this book is called Eat for Energy: How to Beat Fatigue and Supercharge Your Mitochondria to Unlock All-Day Energy. And it's basically everything I know about the science of nutrition and everything my co-author Alex Leaf knows about the science of nutrition to optimize mitochondrial health and to pull on these different levers to increase your energy levels. Now, the very short version of what I'm going to tell you is go get this book because it's packed with a lot of information that is incredibly valuable and a lot of stuff you're just not going to find elsewhere. Now, I'll tell you a bit about what's in this book so that you know, beyond just me telling you to go get it because it's really valuable, what's actually in there, what are you going to learn? Now, first of all, I want to tell you, this is not a typical diet book in the sense that this is not, I'm not doing what most diet book authors do, which is try to say something to the effect of, you know, everybody's got it wrong. The real way, best way to eat, it's not low fat, it's not low carb, it's not paleo, it's not keto, it's not Mediterranean, it's not vegan, really it's blank. And then, you know, they're typically inserting some wacky extreme diet that's some specific diet that they're claiming is the best true, you know, right way to eat for optimal health or for kicking butt or whatever the claim is, or for weight loss or whatever it is for longevity. And if you're smart and you've been around the block and you have been paying attention to nutrition science, you know that almost all of this is nonsense. The reality is there's huge financial incentives for people to try to promote this kind of pitch, to promote, you know, their one diet discovery. They've discovered the truth about the best way to eat. And if that thing goes viral and tens or hundreds of millions of people adopt it, they can make millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars by promoting that kind of narrative. The problem is, if you're seeing people say stuff like that, you can pretty much guarantee that it's a bunch of cherry-picked, distorted, misrepresented nonsense. They are not accurately and honestly talking about the science of nutrition. Because the reality is, we don't have science to support those kinds of claims. We have lots and lots of evidence to support that eating whole foods is incredibly important and is the foundational principle of a healthy diet, getting rid of processed and refined foods. And we have lots of evidence to support that consuming plant foods, unrefined, unprocessed plant foods, particularly non-starchy plant foods, is supportive of disease prevention and longevity. Beyond that, lots of things are arguable. Lots of things like what's the best carb to fat ratio of your diet, how much protein should you eat. There's plenty of room for disagreement, and you know, someone can argue Mediterranean's the best approach or paleo's the best approach, or you know, what for a specific context, you know, in very overweight people, obese people, maybe keto's the best approach. You can make those kinds of arguments. All of that's very reasonable. But anyway, all of that said, what I'm doing in this book is I'm not trying to pitch you on everybody's got it wrong. Really, I'm the only person smart enough to figure out the one true best way to eat. What I'm doing instead, and what my co-author Alex and I are doing, is giving you a compilation of our combined 45 years of studying nutrition science and telling you about, here's everything we know as far as all these different nutrition strategies you can implement and you can pair with any particular dietary pattern that you are on and that you like, whether you're on paleo or whether you're vegan or whether you're keto or you're eating a Mediterranean diet or whatever. You can pair these, you can plug these nutrition strategies into that dietary pattern that you already have and get even better results in terms of especially your energy levels, your brain function, your mood. In other words, how joyful or depressed you are, how relaxed or anxious you are, what is your neurotransmitter balance. You can sleep deeper. You can learn nutrition strategies that are going to massively reduce your risk of dozens of different diseases and extend your lifespan. And we're going to take you through all of those different strategies and hacks that you can plug in, many of which, and there's dozens and dozens of these strategies in this book, many of which are very easy to do and don't require much effort at all. So a bit of an overview of the book. The intro and chapter 1 talk all about basically what's controlling human energy levels, and that centers heavily around the mitochondria. From there, we're going to talk about the different nutritional levers that you can pull to optimize your mitochondrial energy production. So mitochondria, by the way, are, of course, our cellular energy generators. I'm assuming you've listened to me talk on this podcast a bit, and you probably already know that. So chapter 1 is all about circadian rhythm optimization. So how do we optimize our circadian rhythm? We've got a central clock in the brain. We've got peripheral clocks throughout the body. The central clock in the brain is primarily responsive to light inputs. The peripheral clocks in all the other tissues of our bodies, our organs, our liver, our intestines, our hormone-producing glands, our muscles, our skin. All these peripheral clocks are largely dependent on nutrition inputs, and that relates very heavily not just to what you're eating, but when you're eating. So we're talking a lot about feeding and fasting windows. We're talking about how you can stack calories at certain times of day, and when you should be cutting off your eating, what you should be eating before bed. Lots and lots of strategies to synchronize your central clock with all of your peripheral clocks, and by doing so, you're going to optimize your circadian rhythm, which in turn impacts upon numerous neurotransmitters and hormones that are heavily impacting your overall metabolic health, your risk of lots of different diseases, your mood, your energy levels, your sleep quality, and so much more. Just to name a few, it's impacting hormones like testosterone and thyroid hormone and growth hormone, and how insulin resistant you are, or insulin sensitive you are, cortisol, melatonin, and more. It's impacting on neurotransmitters that like dopamine and serotonin and GABA that are affecting mood and motivation and ability to feel joy and ability to relax your brain and go to sleep at night. So we're talking about how to synchronize your circadian clocks and optimize your circadian clocks so that you're optimizing in turn all of these different neurotransmitters and hormones for high energy levels and disease prevention. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, we get into optimizing body composition. This is a huge thing for many, many people. People are when we do studies based on looking at both body composition metrics and combined with biomarkers, roughly 80 to 90% of people are carrying excess body fat. And this is resulting in lots of different things: insulin resistance, chronic low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress that are hindering mitochondrial energy production. So the combination of excess body fat and too low of muscle mass are big contributors to fatigue. And we give you many, many different nutrition strategies, simple nutrition strategies, not extreme diets or anything like that, to optimize your body composition. And in chapter 3, we talk all about blood sugar dysregulation and how to optimize your blood sugar. This is a huge factor for many, many people. And both hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, and high blood sugar are major, major problems and major contributors to low energy levels and energy levels fluctuation in tandem with glycemic variability, meaning if you're fluctuating a lot from high blood sugar levels to low blood sugar levels, that's a major cause of what's controlling your energy levels and impacting them in a negative way. 1/3 of all adults have hypoglycemia, have low blood sugar 2 to 5 hours after eating. There's another chunk that have something called idiopathic postprandial syndrome, where they experience the symptoms of hypoglycemia, fatigue and jitters and shakiness, and maybe being faint or other symptoms like that, anxiety. but they don't necessarily have measurably low blood sugar. And we talk about that also in the book. We talk about chronic hyperglycemia, which is largely the result of insulin resistance driving up your blood sugar levels chronically, and that's causing chronic oxidative stress and damage to your mitochondria and causing them to shut down energy production. And we talk about the fact that even if you don't have diabetes or prediabetes, over 80% of adults in the United States are experiencing on a daily basis spikes of blood sugar levels that are entering into the pre-diabetic or diabetic ranges. And that is, again, a contributor to mitochondrial shutdown. So we give simple hacks. Many things are very, very easy to implement and can make a huge difference. For example, just changing not what is on your plate, but the order in which you eat what's on your plate can actually make a huge difference in your post-meal blood sugar levels. So we give you 2 strategies around that, as well as many other strategies to optimize your blood sugar levels, increase your insulin sensitivity, and basically get those blood sugar levels flattened out, stabilized, so you're not going high and low, or high or low all the time, and crushing your energy levels and your mitochondrial function as a result of that. Then there's a chapter on optimizing gut health. And we know, of course, there's a gut-brain axis, there's a gut mitochondria axis, and the impact of our gut health on our whole body, every organ system of the body, but especially our brain function and our mitochondrial function, our energy levels, is massive and cannot be understated. So how do we optimize our gut health? This is not something that involves very complex, systems and taking a million supplements to kill off lots of bacteria. We're really looking at what are simple tweaks that we can make to our diet to, for example, dramatically increase the amount of bifidobacteria in our intestines. That is going to, and how can we dramatically increase the amount of short chain fatty acid butyrate producing bacteria? And we know that those short chain fatty acids have a massive benefit to mitochondrial function and energy production. So how can we seal the barrier of our gut? Because we know that lots of people with chronic fatigue syndrome have chronic intestinal permeability, and that is a major factor wrecking many people's energy levels. So we give lots of simple nutritional strategies to address those issues. And then in the last chapter of that section of sort of part 1 of the book, it's optimizing brain health. Tons of good stuff there. How to optimize your neurotransmitters to decrease depression and anxiety, increase joy and relaxation, have better sleep quality, protect your long-term brain health, and how to manipulate some of these levers in the brain that are controlling energy levels as well. And then in part 2, there's a chapter, it's 2 chapters. One is on superfoods for energy production, and the second one is supplements, the top evidence-based supplements for energy production. And let me just tell you, that chapter alone is worth the price of admission. This is like an encyclopedia of all of the best supplements, not only to optimize your mitochondrial health, and that's a huge thing, and your energy levels, but supplements for optimizing neurotransmitter balance, supplements for optimizing sleep and gut health, and so much more. There's amazing information in there. And let me just tell you, it goes way beyond just saying, take some stimulants, take some caffeine, which is what you'll find mostly if you're looking up energy supplements online. If you're smart, you've heard me talk about this in the past, that using stimulants and caffeine is not a good approach. It's to trying to enhance your baseline energy levels. And in fact, it's counterproductive in the long term to try to use that approach. So how do we actually use supplements to build up our cellular energy production capacity? How do we build up our mitochondria so we're actually increasing our baseline energy levels over time? That's the goal, is not just to give you a temporary boost, but to actually build a body filled with cells that are constantly producing more energy than they are now. So that's an overview of the book. It is packed with amazing strategies. Again, that can be, it's not a specific diet, it's strategies that can be flexibly implemented on top of and with everything that you're already doing. So that's an overview of the book. Now, if you pre-order before it comes out on May 10th, we're giving away $300 worth, technically $294 worth of free courses on our site. This normally costs $294 on our site. If you pre-order the book, we're giving it to you as a gift. We're giving you the Eat for Energy course and the Sleep and Circadian Rhythm Optimization course for free. All you got to do is go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever favorite online bookstore you want, buy the book, and then send us an email. You can email ari@theenergyblueprint.com with your receipt, and we will set you up with those free courses, free gifts as a thank you. As if the information in the book is not enough. You're going to get amazing value and learn so much and learn so many incredible strategies, easy strategies to massively increase your energy levels, dramatically reduce your risk of dozens of diseases, optimize neurochemical balance and hormone balance to have better mood, more motivation, focus, cognitive performance, better libido, and better sleep, and so much more. So go grab the book, Amazon, wherever you want. Email the receipt to ari@theenergyblueprint.com, and we will hook you up with $294 worth of courses for free as a thank you. And enjoy the book and implement the strategies and get tons of benefits in your life, and then go write a review for us on Amazon telling everybody about how much the book has benefited your life. So go grab the book. It comes out on May 10th, and help spread the word. Tell all your family and friends about this book and how they can improve the quality of their life, their mood and their energy levels and their sleep and their longevity, their lifespan, and much, much more as a result of reading this book. So go get it. Eat for Energy: How to Beat Fatigue and Supercharge Your Mitochondria and Unlock All-Day Energy. Go grab it on Amazon. And now let's get into today's show. Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. With me today is Lauren Geertsen. She's the author of The Invisible Corset: Break Free from Beauty Culture and Embrace Your Radiant Self, and founder of empoweredsustenance.com, a website which has supported over 40 million people with holistic health resources. Her coaching program, Food Without Fear, helps women heal the spiritual root causes of lifelong food and weight problems. So I'm very excited for this episode, and it's going to be especially relevant to anybody who has been sort of indoctrinated into beauty culture, which I think most people, at least in America and much of the Western world, have been. So I think this will be very insightful. So first of all, the title of your book is The Invisible Corset: Break Free from Beauty Culture and Embrace Your Radiant Self. So what is this invisible corset that you are referring to?
Yeah, so the invisible corset is a set of beliefs that women have adopted, and we don't know that these beliefs are running our minds. They're programming, subconscious and unconscious programming. And these beliefs make women as uncomfortable and restricted in our bodies as traditional corsets once did. Like, traditional corsets restricted our movement, changed our bone structure, gave us all these kinds of health problems. We could see those whalebone corsets. It was easier to take them off, right? And Nietzsche says something about it's easier to, invisible ties are the hardest to cut. And that's what we're dealing with now, with these beliefs that keep women so restricted and held back from their true selves and from their health. And I wrote the book so women can see those beliefs and get themselves free.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about what some of those beliefs are. What does this consist of? What would a belief system or worldview or self-view, if I can use that term, I don't know if that's a word that anybody uses.
I like it. Self-term?
Self-view, like worldview, but self-view.
Yeah.
That is, sort of what would be considered this invisible corset that's restricting women in particular. Is it women? Obviously it's women especially, but would you say that it's only women?
That's a great question. I see these beliefs as impacting all human beings because they come down to how we've been indoctrinated to interact with our bodies. As I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and that pertains to men and women. But I specifically wrote the book for women because we get the brunt of messages around you must change your body change your body to look a certain way in order to have love and success in your life. But yes, there's a lot of this book that will apply to men. So the 5 main strings of the corset, these main beliefs, they're fear, domination, disconnection, mechanization, and coercion. And I can break these down a little bit. Should I do that?
Yeah, please tell me them one more time. Fear, domination,
Disconnection, mechanization, and coercion.
Okay. So yeah, let's get into each one of those.
So the fear, that is the string most women can recognize, especially in my coaching work. Women will tell me, I just hate my body, Lauren, and I don't know how not to. And I don't know how to fix this hate. So it's not a hate problem, it's a fear problem. The root of all hate is fear. When we hate another person or a group of people, it's because we fear them due to a lack of understanding and a lack of communication, right? Like this is talk about political experiences in the world right now where there's so much hate and division. It comes down to subconscious fear. And the same is true in the relationship with our bodies. And women in particular, through heavy duty propaganda and advertising, we've been taught to fear the natural, truthful expression of our human bodies. Like we've been taught to fear our aging process. And that's why so many women are, I call it age dysmorphia. This belief that the natural expression of our age is something to hide. It's why so many women are getting botulism toxin injected into their bodies. Like that's crazy to think about it. The programming is that intense. We're afraid of body fat. You know, there's a degree of, I come from a nutrition background and I healed myself with holistic nutrition. So like, I truly believe the power of how we can turn around incurable illnesses, how health is not only the avenue to freedom in our life, but spiritual awakening. But on the flip side, this obsession with chasing weight loss in very unhealthy ways in order to feel happy with ourselves, that comes from fear, and it leads us down some, bad paths there. We're afraid of our body's intuition as well. We're taught to cut ourselves off from our emotions, from our intuition. Pharmaceutical propaganda has a lot to do with this. And I do talk in my book about we're taught to medicate our emotions, the natural spectrum of human emotions, based on a false theory of brain chemical imbalance that's propagated by the pharmaceutical industry to make money. So that creates more fear of our natural emotion experience. So there's a lot there, that we've been taught to fear.
Absolutely. So we could spend a lot of time. We could probably spend the whole hour on just that topic, but let's go into the next one, domination.
Domination. This is about how we have a paradigm of ownership over our body rather than partnership. Ownership is coming from a place of entitlement. I have the right to force my body to look a certain way or to behave or act a certain way. And we can often have this mental paradigm in relationship with other people too. If we grew up in a family where our parents had an ownership with us, then we normalize that way of relating to other beings around us, including our own bodies. Whereas partnership is, instead of being a hierarchical situation, it's we're on the same playing field. And it's the concept that by listening to our bodies, instead of trying to force cultural values on our bodies, we can heal ourselves, we can find freedom, we can find ease and joy and peace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
So and the beautiful thing about doing this work, when you heal that relationship with your body, you learn that partnership mode. You start to bring that into your other relationships in your life. And you start to recognize where other people are having ownerships with you. And you're like, oh, that's not healthy. I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. So big ripple effects.
Okay. So disconnection.
Disconnection is the going deeper around this topic of we're disconnected from our intuition, from our sixth sense. And if we look at ancient and indigenous cultures, when I was doing my nutrition training, I really focused and appreciated the work of Weston A. Price, right? And he looked at all these indigenous cultures. They all intuitively landed on the optimal way to nourish the human body, even if their diets varied based on where the people were living and what food was available. How did they do that? They didn't need science. They didn't need studies and test tubes and measuring minerals. They did it because they were that in touch with their body's needs, but also they were that in touch with the communication that happens between the natural world and the human body. So one interesting thing that I learned in this process was that in all ancient cultures, the shamans, the tribal healers, the medicine people, they made their plant medicines because the plants would literally tell them the healing they had to offer humanity. Like that's how we were using willow bark for pain relief way before we could actually like study that in a test tube, the chemical components of aspirin. So there's so many examples of that. Now modern science is proving what we could feel. So that's disconnection, and it's a matter of getting reconnected with that communication between us and our bodies and the natural world.
Yeah. Okay. Mechanization.
Mechanization is a paradigm that is so overarching in our culture. It's like the water we swim in. It can be kind of difficult to recognize. But again, I go back to let's compare our worldview now to indigenous cultures, because what they considered normal can look completely different than what we consider normal now, just in terms of how they looked at the world, especially the spiritual underpinnings that was present in all indigenous cultures that we have now erased from, especially the academic and the scientific perceptions of the world. So in this chapter, I go in depth into the Western science perspective and how the history of Western science has really shaped how we interpret the world. And when I say that, it's like that interpretation may not reflect actual reality. So I know you come from a science background, and science was something I taught myself how to read scientific literature when I was 18 in order to learn how to heal my autoimmune disease. So there's so much there. And I think there's room for seeing the limitations of science. It teaches us to have a very mechanistic relationship with the natural world and with our bodies. So like reductionism and materialism are two major assumptions in the scientific paradigm. Reductionism is the belief that we can understand the whole by breaking it down into the smallest parts. And this is then why Western science says, oh, energy medicine is all woo-woo, because energy medicine is actually it works on the larger synergistic level of reality. Like there's an energetic field to a plant. And then when we break that plant down into just like the molecules that we would extract into a supplement, we lose that energetic synergistic whole. Does that make sense? And then another example here is materialism, which is the belief that everything that is real can be measured by science.
Mm.
But the problem here is that our measurement tools, our scientific measurement tools, are kind of slow when we compare them to the efficiency and speed of our intuition. Like I said, the ancient cultures Weston Price studied, they were ahead of the measurement game.
Mm-hmm.
So just having this perspective of the scientific paradigm we're immersed in is hugely valuable, but it also teaches us to have a mechanistic view of reality, and maybe there's room for seeing the world in a different way as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one. There's a couple points I want to come back to, but let's get through.
Yeah, I'm so interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. The fifth prong, coercion.
Coercion is the concept of propaganda where we can believe that we're choosing something, but if we don't see how we're being mind controlled, we're not actually making that choice, right? We have seen this like on such a mega scale in the last 2 years with the COVID psychological operation. And which is one reason this book, The Invisible Corset, is more appropriate than ever, because it teaches people how to see mind control and psychological abuse. So a lot of women say, well, I'm choosing to get dangerous and invasive treatments like breast implants, Botox, cosmetic surgery, because it makes me feel good. So I'm choosing it. But the truth is, we're not choosing that if we're mind controlled and so controlled by propaganda that we feel like that is our only avenue to feel safe and healthy and accepted. Mm-hmm. So I really break that down in that chapter on coercion.
Do you know, did you look into Edward Bernays at all? Do you know who that is?
I don't know.
He's a cousin of Sigmund Freud, and he's kind of, in a way, sort of a father of propaganda. He was instrumental in the early 1900s in really creating sort of almost a science of how to do propaganda effectively. There's some really good YouTube videos kind of on the history around that. If you look up Edward Bernays, his last name is Bernays. And for anybody listening, I highly recommend, there's one video, it's just 12 minutes long. It's from a YouTube channel called Academy of Ideas, and it's called Edward Bernays and Group Psychology, Manipulating the Masses. There's another one that's also good called How One Man Manipulated America. Very, very interesting, insightful, to understand really like how one does consciously, how one engages in propaganda to manipulate the masses to get a certain effect, and very insightful to watch some of that history.
I'm definitely going to look that up.
And very relevant to the work you're doing. So one idea I want to come back to that you've mentioned a few times in passing is intuition. So intuition is, I think it's a very problematic word, and it's a problematic concept because many people define it differently and think of it differently. It can be thought of as a sort of mystical, supernatural connection with some source of higher wisdom, or it can be thought of in more mundane terms, like, for example, Yuval Noah Harari defines it basically as pattern recognition that is a result of learned experience and learned knowledge over time that allows you to recognize certain things. So, for example, in a clinical setting, a doctor might see a patient with a certain few sets of symptoms or a weird rash that's presenting, in a certain part of their body. And maybe the first time they ever saw that, they had no idea what the hell was causing it, but they've seen it now over the course of 20 years. Maybe they've seen it. It's really rare. Nobody knows what it is, but this one particular doctor has seen 30 or 40 cases like it over the course of a 20-year career. And they know from those past 30, 40 experiences over that 20-year span,
90% of the time it's this thing, that's what causes it. It's some allergic dermatitis to, a particular kind of soap that certain people have, right? And that they can figure that out very intuitively, based on their personal intuition. That's not a result of necessarily some connection with a higher power or anything mystical or supernatural, but really many, many years of seeing thousands and thousands of people and having that experience of seeing those kinds of patients. You know what I mean?
So it's observational on an even subconscious level.
Yes. So, and there's other nuances, I think, around the advice of following one's intuition that can be tricky or problematic in certain ways. But I want to first sort of get into how you think of intuition. What do you think intuition actually means? We all use this word in common parlance, but very few people actually define it or can define it in terms and say, here's what intuition actually is. Mm-hmm. And what do you think the relevance of it is in terms of human health?
Mm-hmm. I love this discussion. So I think that intuition is literally our sixth sense. And it is our connection to the energetic internet of the world, that there is a level of reality that science is yet to measure, although there have been some interesting measurements into, for example, increased activity at certain acupuncture points or meridians or chakras. Like, we are developing tools to understand a little more about what the phenomena that ancient cultures used to heal the human body before we had drugs specifically. So we have this natural connection to that energetic dimension of the world. And through that communication, that's how we can find balance. That's how our bodies know how to balance us. It's how our bodies know again, I'll go back to the example of Weston Price, what we need to nourish ourselves, how we need to live to find balance, what environments or even what people are good for us to be around. And we can kind of feel that. Now, I'll say that, and then I'll also say, whether people want to entertain this thought or not, what if that energetic dimension has an aspect of the divine and the mystical to it? Mm-hmm. What if that comes down to the oneness? And is it possible that the body seeking balance and the body knowing what it needs to heal itself is part of a divine connection? I'll say, like, one of my earliest personal experiences with feeling my intuition, feeling my body plugged into that energetic internet, was the first time I was muscle tested by a holistic practitioner. A lot of people can want to debunk muscle testing, and I think it's fine if they have whatever opinion, but I had a personal experience that was so profound. There's no like quote evidence somebody could say to erase that experience from my body. And it was where I was very, very ill with an autoimmune disease, and the practitioner, like, I hadn't felt strong in my body for a very long time. And the practitioner gave me a supplement to hold, and then muscle tested me. And it was like this cataclysmic force of strength surging through my body. And I started crying because I just felt at the deepest level of myself, oh my gosh, my body knows what it needs to heal me at some connection, like at some level. It's communicating with this supplement that I'm holding on a dimension that I don't yet understand. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll bring a lot of skepticism to it. And for the sake of playing devil's advocate. Now, I don't want to claim that there's no element of the magical and the mystical that takes place and that ties into this. What I do think, though, is that there are a lot of people who are like us, who are a bit older, who have maybe studied health for a long time, who have certain intuitions about what is good for them or what their body needs. And there is often a tendency to over attribute those intuitions to the mystical, when a lot of that information actually comes from knowledge and past experience. So I'll give you an example. I have little kids. I don't know if you have little kids, but in my fantasy world, before I had little kids, I envisioned my little kids wanting to eat lots of broccoli and Brussels sprouts and asparagus, and since I'm, teaching them how to eat well, and we eat well in every meal, that they would intuitively know that that's what's best for them, and not want the junk food. And the truth is, as pristine as the diet and the environment that I provide for them is, occasionally, certain foods slip in either at friends' houses or as occasional treats or whatever. And the truth is, my kids will happily indulge in lots of foods that are not very good for them, despite me teaching them, spending lots of time teaching them what is healthy nutritionally and what's not, and wanting to tell them to eat this but not that. The truth is, they will jump for the ice cream or the potato chips or the donuts given the opportunity to do so. And there's a huge element of, there's many forces at play, because humans are evolutionarily wired by millions of years of evolution. Our brains are hardwired to seek out highly calorie dense sources of sugar and fat. And many of these modern foods hijack that system. They become supernaturally rewarding, super physiological pleasure beyond what's natural. And by virtue of that, they can rewire the brain to really intensely want to seek out those foods. So if I ask my 5-year-old or my 2-year-old, what is your intuition telling you about whether you should eat this ice cream or not? They're going to be like, my intuition's telling me, hell yeah, I should eat this ice cream. You know what I mean? And yet, if I ask you that same question, you might pause for a moment, kind of tap into your higher self, let's say, and say, that ice cream is definitely not the best thing for me because it's got a bunch of refined sugar in it and a bunch of vegetable oil and, who knows what else. And I should opt in favor of, these whole unprocessed foods themselves. And you might attribute that to, that's me tapping into intuition. You get what I mean? So there's evolutionary forces, millions of years, that wired our brain to maybe seek out certain things that, given the modern environment, aren't in our best interests, but were once intuitively aligned with our best interests. If you were in a hunter-gatherer setting and food is scarce, you want to seek out the most calorie-dense, sugar-rich, and fat-rich foods you can possibly find. But now that same, you could call it intuitive biological force, is driving us to seek out things that are maladaptive, that are actually harmful for us. So the situation is much more complex now. And this is where I see learned knowledge and past experience. Oh, when I used to eat that diet of lots of McDonald's and processed food, I got really fat and unhealthy. And, I had that personal experience. Oh, and I've learned a lot about studying nutrition and reading these thousands of studies. And now I know what's good for me and what's not. I think those things play a huge factor into influencing what somebody's intuitions are about what's good or not for them.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't disagree with that. I think it's a really great example. I think it raises the other question of addiction versus like intuitive eating, because if we are hardwired to go for these foods, especially if, our body is preemptively perceiving a famine. And so now it's like, well, yeah, I have to get all the energy I can. But why would the body be hardwired to crave foods that contain carcinogens and, ingredients that make us sick? I think the body is smarter than that. But there's a conflict between addiction. Like you said, these foods are designed to get us addicted and hooked. And so it can kind of like hijack and override the body's true evolutionary programming, which is to avoid poison. It's kind of a dichotomy. Like, why are we craving literal poison?
Well, I would push back on you a little bit there and say, light is an area that I specialize in a lot. What's interesting is our perception of light is also a function of what our brain has evolved to see or not see. There are parts of the light spectrum and many parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that exist, but we can't see them or sense them. So as an example, we can't really feel X-rays or radio waves or Wi-Fi signals. Those are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. There's even parts of the light spectrum, parts of the UV spectrum or the infrared spectrum that exist that we can't see or feel for the most part. But other species, like let's say bees, have evolved to be able to see certain parts of those spectrum that we can't. This is just an analogy to say, I don't think it's that we're craving the poisons or the carcinogens. I think we're craving the things that we have evolved to crave, like, let's say, sugar dense, fat rich substances. Salt is also a reward palatability factor as well, and crunchiness is as well. But it just so happens that many of those hyper processed foods that are really rich in sugars and fats or fats happen to also be rich in lots of toxic substances that we can't necessarily see, taste, or sense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I mean, I think we could go, this is a very interesting conversation. I think we could go back and forth on it. And I'm glad you brought up the electromagnetic spectrum too, because that could be one example where that ties into this dimension of reality that I think is part of our sixth sense as human beings. I actually do think we have an ability to sense more than our five senses pick up on that spectrum. And then when we do pick up on that spectrum, we call it intuition, because it's not attributed to other five senses. Like I'm kind of the canary in the coal mine person. So I had electromagnetic sensitivities for a long time. I would feel my hands start to get all tingly and numb when I was near a Wi-Fi router. Like I could call that my intuition, but it's just like my sixth sense picking up on that larger spectrum of reality. So there's a lot of nuances here. I think it's a really important conversation on, I don't have the right answer. What is intuition? What is the degree of the mystical involved? What is the degree of subconscious programming and awareness? So I'm glad you brought that all up.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's a super interesting thing to discuss, and it is very nuanced. Anyway, we'll switch gears into something else now. So, you, on the one hand, you've healed yourself from autoimmune disease as a result of using nutrition and other lifestyle methods. I would imagine a certain kind of way of eating, not just eating whatever you wanted, but a certain kind of eating. And yet it's also the case that, overly restrictive diets can also be very toxic. So how do you sort of make sense? How do you reconcile those two, and how do you find a middle ground?
Yeah, well, this is a good segue from what we were just talking about, because I used the specific carbohydrate diet to address my autoimmune disease, which was ulcerative colitis. And I had a very extreme, life-threatening case of it. And it was incredible to regain my health in about 3 months. And I've been completely healed for about a decade now. But even before my ulcerative colitis diagnosis at 14, I struggled with anorexia, which is one of the reasons I wrote this book, because there are so many women and young girls who get sucked into disordered eating in our Western world. And so I've seen the absolute freedom of a restricted diet. I've seen the absolute prison of a self-restricted diet. And the guidance that I have is your diet should give you freedom. It should make you more free. And if we're eating in a way where we're getting more energy, more health, more vitality, right, where we're healing chronic disease, it's freedom at an incredible level. But now where I work with women is less so giving restricted diets and more so helping them have freedom beyond restricted diets, especially when people use a restricted diet and it does give them a degree of freedom, but then they start to feel trapped. And I see this happening because food is powerful in healing our life to some degree, but then we have to go broader than food. If we're stuck in an unhealthy corporate job, chronic, codependent, awful relationships, if we're consuming media propaganda and, fear porn and all this stuff that's setting off our nervous system in the wrong way, we're never going to be happy no matter how pristine our diet is. So diet can be one in to health, and then we have to go broader. And so where I work now is women who are realizing they need to go broader than food. They know the importance of eating basic whole foods, home cooked meals, but they feel trapped. They want more freedom around food, the freedom to have pleasure in their life, to go out to restaurants, to think less about food because they feel like they're planning and thinking about it 24/7. They feel like their obsession around their weight is making their lives not as free as they want because they just don't feel the confidence to put on a bathing suit or just like wear what they want to wear. So that's where I'm like, okay, so let's give you more freedom by expanding your diet. Mm-hmm. So the freedom is always the goal.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great frame. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other aspects of beauty culture. You mentioned Botox, botulinum toxin. Mm-hmm. You've mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned this, but obviously fits with it, things like breast implants or butt implants or mm-hmm. liposuction and all these kinds of things. Breast implants, I think in my lifetime have become shockingly common. I think they've gone from, maybe 1 in 10 when I was young to now it seems like 7 out of 10, or, it's probably not that high, but it's not far off. Mm-hmm. It's almost become more normal, at least in, where I used to live in Southern California. It was the case that it was probably more normal to have fake boobs than it was to have real ones. So what is your take on all of this? And maybe an interesting way of phrasing it would be, how old are you, Lauren?
I'm 29.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say that Botox and facial fillers, like that is now normalized for mm-hmm. women 25 and up. Like me seeing that in my social circle, it's kind of abnormal that I'm the one without anything in my face at 29, right. Which is crazy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So as you get into your 40s and 50s and you start aging and you start to have some wrinkles and you start to have, maybe your face isn't as full as it once was, and maybe your boobs are sagging a bit more and you're feeling a little self-conscious about it. Maybe you have a partner who, you also, through various subtle aspects of the relationship, maybe a girl walks by with big fake boobs and he's checking her out and it makes you feel self-conscious about yours. Maybe he's giving you pressure, to dye your hair, dye the grays in your hair, or get Botox because of wrinkles in your face or something like that. Even in subtle ways, not necessarily aggressively saying you need to do this, but maybe it would be nice if you did that. I'm curious how you would navigate that situation. What kinds of things would you do or not do? What would be your framing of it psychologically?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I would help that woman understand is the concept of Stockholm syndrome when it comes to the beauty industry. Stockholm syndrome is when we are in love with our abuser. We think that our abuser is going to save us and that they actually have our best interest at heart. So a lot of women think that, the makeup industry, the cosmetic surgery industry is there to help me because it will give me confidence. Mm-hmm. But it is the one that took your confidence away in the first place. Not only your confidence, but your kind of true self, vital essence, your sensual self. It's really interesting because like women get their sexuality tied up with their body's appearance. Like they believe, well, I'll be more sexy and desirable if I get my breasts filled with silicone, for example, or if I get fat injections into my butt. This is, or the other one, which is so crazy, which is labioplasty, which is, I'm going to go mutilate my lady parts down there to make it look literally like a porn standard. And it's so ironic because these interventions reduce a woman's sexiness if we define it as her ability to feel sexual pleasure. Like it destroys erotic sensation. It destroys your erotic tissue. So it's completely backwards there. We need to realize a woman's sexiness is how she feels in her body, not how she looks in her body. And a woman who feels sexy and sensual, that is so magnetic. That is so desirable. Like any man in his right mind would say, yes, I would much rather prefer a woman who doesn't have a plastic body, but just is like so uninhibited and connected and free in her body. Like that's what turns me on, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest piece, is like, we need to come back and re-inhabit our own experience instead of trying to like fix our inner experience by patching it up on the outside. And truly, a woman who is in love with her life, she is going to be loved and seen as so desirable. That is the deepest essence of this book, is to free women to be in love with themselves, in love with their lives. And that kind of love, it's a magnet for love coming into your life.
What would you say to a woman who says, I have breast implants, but it makes me feel more confident to have bigger, perkier boobs?
So again, this comes down to the Stockholm syndrome. You're giving your power away because you're getting your confidence from the industry that stole it from you in the first place. It's like you're saying, well, my drug dealer is making me happy by providing me with drugs. Well, you're giving your power away to be happy to the dangerous, toxic drugs. And there's an aspect here where women have to be in touch with their true selves in order to know their true preferences. Our true selves, that is our mindset that is free from mind control and propaganda. We have to do a lot of work of deprogramming and detoxing the propaganda to actually know what our real opinions are. And because plastic surgery is self-destructive and dangerous, it does not reflect the best interest of our true selves. Yeah. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, I address this in the book too. They'll say it's evolutionary, that women will use certain interventions, whether it's plastic surgery or spending an average of $200,000 plus on beauty products in their lifetime, because that's how we find a mate. That's how we make ourselves attractive to the opposite sex, which is our evolutionary wiring. But there are so many holes in that argument. Like, this kind of comes back to our intuition discussion. It's not in our evolutionary best interest to mutilate our own bodies or to undertake interventions that put toxins in our body, or especially if we look at other cosmetic surgeries that are really popular, eyelid surgery in Asia to create a more Eurocentric eye shape. It's literally like the most racist plastic surgery, and it's super, super popular among Asian populations. Is it in our biological wiring to erase our ethnic heredity from our face? Or does that just reflect cultural programming? Right.
Yeah, well said. So I have a somewhat personal question, personal and universal, to parents or would-be parents. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I spend a lot of time actually reading and listening to podcasts about being a better parent and raising kids and educating kids. So it's very much in my interest to do that. But I haven't necessarily spent a lot of time on this aspect of things, the aspect of raising my daughter in this sort of toxic beauty culture world that we live in. what would you say are some of the most important things for me and other parents of daughters, especially, to be aware of as far as raising daughters in this world and raising them to have healthy body image and a healthy relationship with themselves, their bodies?
This question is so close to my heart. Like, I've always known I don't want to be a mother, but I felt it so on my heart to help break this cycle of young girls hating their bodies. Like, that is part of my soul mission. And I think the most important thing for parents to understand is that their example speaks so much louder than words. You know, children, we'll go back to the intuition discussion, they are very in touch with that sixth sense. Like, they pick up the energy and the emotional experiences of those around them. And that speaks louder than any of the words that are coming out of their parents' mouth. So, for example, my mom, she vowed she would never criticize her daughter's bodies because my grandmother, her mom, was very critical of my mother's body growing up. But my mom didn't know how to fully break the cycle because she criticized her own body, right? And she would say all these comments when she was in a dieting mode where, oh, I can't eat this food, it has too many calories, things like that, where this was what kind of triggered my anorexia at a very young age. I was listening to that, and then I was seeing my body turn into her body before my very eyes as I went through puberty. And so I had been pre-programmed with the exact instruction manual of how to hate what my body was turning into. So the most important thing, especially, this is kind of like where the mothers need to focus, is healing and removing their own invisible corsets, so that their self-talk just reflects loving their bodies, because children pick up on that. And a big piece there is how we talk about food. I think it's important to have our conversations around food reflect how it makes us feel. So instead of like, I don't want to eat this because it's going to make me fat, it has too many calories, which instills a fear mentality, it's like, I want to eat this specific thing because like a fresh salad or something, because I know it's going to make me feel really good and energized afterwards. Or I'm going to pass on the ice cream, for example, because I know if I'll eat it, I'm going to have a stomach ache afterwards or just not feel my best. And it's really important I feel my best. So there's an interesting book. It's called French Kids Eat Everything. This is what I recommend parents read to like shape their language around food for kids, because the French have a much more balanced, positive relationship with food, and French kids really do eat everything. They have a very balanced diet.
Excellent. Okay, so the last thing that I want to ask you is, if you were going to leave people with 3 or 4 of your top tips to overcome or snip the strings of some of these invisible corsets that you've discussed, what would be sort of your top 3 or 4 things you want to leave people with?
First comes to mind is delete social media accounts from people who are stuck in the corset, who are showing off fake bodies or who are trying to get external validation for their bodies. Just get that out of your perspective, along with media that makes you feel bad when you consume it, and asking yourself, when it comes to your beauty choices, does this make me feel more comfortable? Like if you're putting makeup on in the morning and it's taking you a full hour and it's, just not feeling comfortable to have 5 layers of mascara so you can't like cry during the day or laugh freely, does that make you feel more comfortable? Do the tight pants with the Spanx, does that make you feel more comfortable? And just that mental flip can help you reconnect with your internal experience. And then I guess this would be the third or the fourth thing, which is another mental reframe. when it comes to beauty choices, asking yourself, do I feel inadequate without this? In other words, is this choice reflecting shame or fear? Because when we're making choices from shame or fear, first of all, it's unconscious. That's coming from our ego or our shadow side. And it's not going to make us feel better in the long term. Where do you need to heal that sense of inadequacy deep down instead of just patching it up on the outside?
Awesome. Lauren, I absolutely love this discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with my audience. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing. Where can people follow your work, learn more about you, get your books, programs, things of that nature?
My website is empoweredsustenance.com. On Instagram, I am body_connection_coach, although I don't know, I speak a lot of truth there, so I might be getting kicked off any minute. And my book, The Invisible Corset, is at invisiblecorset.com or any major booksellers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. It was great to connect with you in real time, and I hope to speak with you again in the near future.
Thank you, Ari. It was a great conversation.
Hey, this is Ari again. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Just a quick reminder, the new book, my new book, and Alex Leaf's new book, Eat for Energy, comes out on May 10th. So go pre-order that book right now so you can get it delivered to your house on May 10th. It's an incredible book. It's packed with amazing information. You're going to learn strategies to literally double your energy levels in the next 60 days, sleep deeper than you have since you were a kid, improve your gut health, improve your brain health, and so much more. So enjoy the book. Go grab it on Amazon. Write me a review telling me how much it's benefited your life. Go post it on Amazon. And I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will talk to you again soon. The book comes out May 10th, so go grab it right now. And one more thing, if you pre-order the book before May 10th, we're giving away $294 of bonuses for free. These are two courses, the Eat for Energy online course and the Sleep and Circadian Rhythm Optimization course. The total value we normally sell them for is $294. We're giving it away for free right now if you pre-order the book. So all you got to do is go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever you want, get the book, and then email us the receipt. You can send me an email at ari@theenergyblueprint.com. My team will answer it, and they'll get you all set up with your free bonuses. As if the book was not enough in and of itself. And I assure you it is. It's an incredible book. It's got dozens of nutrition strategies that are going to massively improve your life and that are easy to implement. So go grab the book. I hope you enjoy it. Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at The Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next one.